I'm Isabella Chenault, and today I will be talking about the impact of sexism in film. My research question for this topic was, since the 20th century, how has the portrayal of women in film impacted the way that women are viewed in a real-world lens? And through much deliberation, I have found that since the 20th century, the film industry has perpetuated sexist stereotypes about women, allowing these stereotypes to follow women into their homes, workspaces, and even having adverse effects behind the scenes. When thinking about stereotypes, it's easy to get caught up in simple notions like women are weaker than men or women are too emotional. And although these common notions are harmful, the film industry provides a more complex take on these stereotypes, making them into archetypes. The most common female archetypes in film are seen here, such as the damsel in distress, which has existed as early as the Grecian Empire. In Greek mythology, the damsel would often be a mortal woman that gods preyed upon, but in a more modern context, the damsel acts as a pawn to the larger story. Getting killed off, sexualized, or sexually assaulted, they are more often than not bargaining chips in high-stakes situations, and their self-worth is degraded to a single plot point. The femme fatale is the opposite side of the same coin. Instead of being frail, naive, and expendable like the damsel, she is hypersexual and dominant. This is flawed as it demeans women in power, reducing them to their sexuality. Or in other cases, the dominant woman is seen as the crazy ex-girlfriend who chases the protagonist around and never looks really any deeper into their past. And it's important to note that all of these portrayals of women usually have been and are expected to be attractive, thin, and something for a male-dominated audience to feast their eyes upon. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, the author of Women Who Run with Wolves, Myths and Stories About the Wild Woman Archetype, states that while archetypes may emanate through us for short periods of time in what we call the numinous experience, no woman can emanate an archetype continuously. Yet the trap requires that women exhaust themselves trying to achieve these unrealistic levels. The trap of trying to fit into a box has detrimental impacts. In a 2007 report by the American Psychological Association, they linked higher exposure of media portrayals of hypersexualized and unhealthy body images of college-age women to the development of psychiatric disorders, such as eating disorders and depression. This representation only reaches younger and younger audiences, as the Girl Scout Research Institute found that 88% of girls believe that popular media places a lot of pressure on girls to be thin. Not only does the constant sexualization of women in film impact the body images of women, but it follows women into the home, with many film critics undermining stories of domestic abuse by sexualizing them. This phenomenon is outlined by Nina Metz from the Chicago Tribune, where she outlines the domestic abuse storyline in the show Big Little Lies. She states that the husband attacks his wife physically and mentally. Sometimes the violence involves sex, and all of it happens in private, where their seemingly perfect marriage disintegrates, becoming increasingly dangerous as the season progresses. But Nick Hale from the New York Times decides to only comment on the sexuality of the situation, denying the many instances where women face sexual coercion and harm at the hands of people they love and trust, reducing Nicole Kidman's character to a victim who is reluctant to leave her husband, or a damsel, and comparing the sexual assault to a comment about 50 Shades of Grey, calling the plotline unoriginal. But the impact of sexism in the film doesn't stop in the home. The Holdout by Norman Rockwell, based on the popular film 12 Angry Men, shows a woman being pushed into a corner in decision-making. The title implies that she is the last one to make the decision, and she is in need of convincing by the rest of the jury. The men stand around her, crowding her, using their stature and the fact that they are men and feel entitled to persuade her as their argument point, while she sits silently and doesn't budge. This not only plays into the stereotype that women are less demeaning than men, but also provides an important commentary on how women perceive their worth. This type of pressure has been made commonplace in both film and real life, one relevant example being the reluctance to ask for a pay raise in the workplace. The film industry itself, Sony Pictures revealed that while negotiating their salaries for roles in The American Hustle, Actresses Jennifer Lawrence and Amy Adams came away with less than their male co-stars in an ensemble cast. Lawrence and Adams came away with 2% less of the film's profits, while Christian Bale, Bradley Cooper, and Jeremy Renner were each awarded 9%. Jennifer noted that she felt that she had failed in her negotiation because she didn't want to seem spoiled or like she was asking too much, even though she was entitled to the same pay as her male counterparts. And the pay gap in Hollywood is not a single instance issue, as the highest paid woman in Hollywood, according to the 2014 Forbes list of the world's highest paid actors and actresses, still makes $42 million less than her male counterpart, with Emma Stone making $26 million and Mark Wahlberg making $68 million. The disparity continues as it also affects those in the writers' room of Hollywood. According to the Hollywood Writers Reports, female writers make almost $200,000 less than male writers in the 95th percentile of their salaries, as seen in the pink. And it's a daunting task to ask for a higher pay in a male-dominated industry, especially when, as seen in the red, the percentages of women employed backstage have grown little to none from 1998 to 2017. Not to mention that the amount of women didn't even break 30% in any of the backstage roles listed in the 250 highest grossing movies in 2017. With all this being said, how do we begin to solve an issue like this? Though it may seem simple enough, hiring women to be in film would have an incredibly positive impact, as having more women behind the scenes allows for more accurate and multidimensional portrayals of them rather than just archetypes, and more women in the field allows for the chance to have their voices heard. They would be more comfortable with advocating for themselves when it came to equal pay among their cast as well as their crew members. Although this may seem simple enough, it cannot be regulated or mandated. This is the current model we work under. You cannot force productions to hire more women, which is how the depictions that we have now came to be. Another solution would have it be a rule in the actors union to mandate the hire of at least 40% women in the company of a union-sponsored production. This way women would be let into the film industry and equal hire would become commonplace. This would have the same effect as the prior solution, but equal pay could be more easily regulated as it would be regulated through the actors union. But this is troublesome as the actors union may stir conflict by doing this, as people would see these quotas as unjust. In conclusion, I think that solution one would be the best solution, as in the end, the film industry has to take it upon themselves to make way for more accurate representation of women. This representation will only pave the way as women will find less hypersexualized representation and more that promotes positivity in their lives. Not only will hiring more women in the film industry equalize pay, it will also help people feel like they are finally being heard. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
I have two questions for you. First one, how valid and reliable were the sources that you used, and then how do you know?
I used a lot of sources such as the Forbes highest grossing actors and actresses list, which collects data based on like the whole world of actors and actresses as seen here. This was from 2014, so it's not the most up-to-date model, but I wanted to find something pre-pandemic as I feel like anything else would be inaccurate. And any others I used were provided from the College Board itself or data from the actors and actresses and the Hollywood Writers Report, just different reports on Hollywood.
Okay, and what evidence would you have, what advice would you have for other researchers who consider this topic in the future?
I would recommend that when researching this topic, I found myself at a halt at the very beginning because I didn't know exactly where to start. And so I would start with getting a grasp of how women are represented in media already and finding the depictions of women. It helped so much for me to identify the archetypes that are already in media.